Thank you very much to everyone for joining us today. So today we're going to be talking about benefits of going digital. There's a big push. It's come from the Department of Health and Social Care for social care providers to go digital. In England specifically, there's a digital transformation fund is being made available to drive that digitalisation process, but also it's at the heart of policy across the rest of the UK regions and the Republic of Ireland. So I've been going to a lot of events across across England for the ICSs are having a lot of events to promote going digital. But what I'm finding a lot of questions around providers having sort of they're quite trepidatious about it. They've got a few concerns. They're a bit worried about various things. So today we're joined by some experts who are going to talk to us about why we should go digital and how we go digital. So what are the benefits and what to expect when it happens. So we're really lucky today to be joined by Paul Parkinson from Seeability. So Paul, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I work for Seeability, as Chris just mentioned. I'm a head of quality and innovation there, and also sort of leading on the implementation of our digital support planning using iPlanet.
Thanks, Paul. And we're also joined today by Lisa Jane.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the invite. I'm actually working with Aspirico for almost the last 10 years, but more importantly, my experience prior to that was working within the social care as a regional director and had lots and lots of experience going digital, finding the systems, all of the things that we're going to talk about today.
Fantastic. That's great. Thanks, Lisa Jane. So if we just move on the slide. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about what are the benefits of going digital, and what does it look like. We'll start with the big question that we're all here for really is, and if we can hear from you, Paul, from your own experience in digitizing social care services, what are the benefits to providers for going digital? I mean, and I mean this from the perspective of what are the benefits for service users, what are the benefits for staff, what are the benefits for the service itself?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'll start off with the people Seeability, we say people we support, so you'll notice me say that. I'll start there. That's our main focus, of course. It's the most important people out of all the groups that you mentioned. I think specifically for people we support, from what people have told me through sort of various self-advocacy groups as well, is that they have something that is sort of clear and accessible. I guess when I say accessible, something that's just meaningful for them and the individual. And even though you might expect the digitization of something to be standardized potentially, there's lots and lots of potential to upload media, bring personal items onto the platform and so on, and just make sure that the person that we support has their own sort of portal or way of looking, in our instance, at their support plan that makes a lot of sense to them. Of course, there's things within digitization that just makes everything a lot more joined up. So currently, if you're using paper or files online, there's a fair bit of jumping to and fro to different documentation and so on. So I think for someone that we support, in the terms of their experience of it, having their own kind of portal so they see it and can control it to some extent themselves is really, really important to us, and that they get a feeling of being personalized. But also, I would say, of course, the benefits are obvious in the sense if it helps them moving on to staff, for instance, and also sort of management of digital records and so on. If things are safer and more organized in the background, that allows more time for people we support to get support from us to do what they want to do. So, freeing up support workers and so on and so forth to do that. That's a big benefit, kind of like a knock-on effect. We'll probably get into at some stage, I think, how support teams in our instance feel a little nervous about digital records being introduced. And I think that's often a reality for some. I'm sure everyone on the call will sort of know that. But I think once people get used to it, and that's our experience with the right kind of support, once people get used to it, you'll see the tapering away of the time that's used in the introduction of it, and time sort of opening up and widening out for people to be support workers again. You know, for the organisation itself and management, I suppose, and reporting, when it's digital, nothing gets lost. So, you know, when you're sort of looking back and figuring out, either trying to sort of, you know, follow a trail, or you're just wanting to check patterns of particular data, or you're reporting on any kind of KPI of any type, it's there. So, you know, download it to spreadsheets or whatever you want to do with it. But of course, it's just a sort of safer, more efficient way of doing that too. So I guess all of that stuff is just sort of rolls on to the other, doesn't it? It's a knock-on effect. I would always come back to the experience, I think, of the people we support. For us, that's the most important thing. And even when things are more organized and efficient in the background, that should be our laser focus, really.
Thanks, Paul. That's great. I mean, you touched on a little bit there as well. So one of the, you know, apart from the idea that you have that constant access to records, and you know, people supported can access their own records and their own outcomes. I mean, that provides a real level of ownership and you know, putting them at the heart of care, which is the whole principle of the Department of Health and Social Care's strategy. You know, and you know, for making it a lot easier for staff as well to go, you know, like exactly as you said, to have more time to be support workers and less time constantly writing things down and, you know, checking everything else. And what would you agree with that, Lisa Jane? What would your experiences from having digitized a service from the service side, as well as from helping services digitize from our side of the fence?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I mean, I echo everything Paul's just said there. Yeah, there's something in it for everybody, and the most important piece is that actually in turn supports the person, sort of, you know, the right support at the right time in the right way. So even though there's benefits for all stakeholders of a system, it actually all revolves around the person supported, whatever those benefits are. So, you know, for a person supported about inclusion, much better communication in between those kind of PCP reviews and the things that we used to do as support people, whether it was a 6-monthly annual basis, much better communication. The sort of up-to-date plans, everybody is up to date. The supporters, the managers, they're clear plans, there's transparency, there's less paperwork, there's so many benefits for the team members on the ground as well. And then from the manager's perspective, you've got to think about things such as quality monitoring. One of the very first things that I remember when I rolled out a CRM system was living in rural North Wales, was I suddenly didn't have to travel 2 hours to do any sort of quality monitoring, and I wasn't being intrusive in somebody's home, and you know, where the supporters would have their sleeps, as they would have maybe called it, the sleeping room. You know, all of that sort of invasive quality monitoring went as well. So at the end of the day, it's all a benefit to the people that we were actually supporting.
Yeah, that's great. And I think as well, you know, that principle of, I think a lot of the digital systems we're looking at, actually, you know, you're not building processes necessarily just for the provider, we're actually building them around the person. You know, and I think, you know, the implications longer term, obviously, you know, there are practical implications, such, you know, the agenda around integrating health and social care is very important, and obviously data flow will be part of that. But you know, they're big concepts that even I get bored with. So on a real life, every day-to-day sort of basis, someone's life is going to get better, a member of staff's life is going to get better, and your service is going to be able to measure that and evidence that better. And you know, rather than, you know, looking at it, I like to think of it as my experience, my own background in social care, in using digital rather than to monitor compliance and quality, actually to evidence it. You know, a lot of providers are always doing this all the time. We're making people's lives better. We're helping people become more independent. But I don't think traditional paper systems haven't been that great at evidencing that, because we're, you know, if it takes you 5 minutes to write your notes, you're focusing on the things you've done, not what that means for the person. What's the impact of that on the person? So so in terms of, you know, looking at that a little bit deeper, so we're looking at the practical implications. You know, obviously, you know, there's a lot of benefits for communication, as you said, Lisa Jane, is a real key. And as Paul touched on, you know, more time for people to be supported and people to be supported, and you know, the more people are supported, the more independent they'll become, and the better their quality of life. But what about the practical implications? You know, digitization, say, you know, what difference does it make in terms of care delivery and support delivery? And you know, how efficient you are and things like that. Paul, you've got from your own experience on that?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's one thing probably to be said, isn't there, that you know, even though the platform exists in a digital form, you still need to sort of complete it with, you know, high quality data, whether that be notes or numbers or whatever. But I think, you know, that's something that organizations need to sort out no matter the platform. So I think if you're feeding you know, digital records, really good quality information, lots more is just automatic. And I think it cuts out a lot of those stages that, well, you guys have been talking about, really, where things feel a little more manual and therefore take longer. And I think once you see the benefits of that, there's a slight craving for more of it. I think that's probably a reflection that we all, you know, we all live in a bit of a digital world now, or a digital world, and we expect things to appear like magic. So, for instance, in Seeability, where we work, you know, a couple of things that are working really well that we can see the benefits of, for instance, developing people's outcomes and tracking and monitoring people's outcomes and being able to get some really good data and reporting for that. You suddenly start looking at other areas of people's lives or the organization and wanting exactly the same. So it does, I think, sort of produce a bit of a thirst for it, because you can see the potential in the efficiencies that it creates. I was talking to some support teams yesterday, and people were asking for, enthusiastically asking for lots more for the platform to do. So I think, you know, once you get on a roll and people can see the benefits and time opens up for folk, and people get used to it, then lots of those practical things, I think, begin to get ticked off.
That's great, thanks. And Lisa Jane as well. I mean, in terms of, you know, the practical, you know, we've looked at the sort of, you know, the ultimate goals, and you know, the difference if you're making quality and everything. What the practical implications of going digital? You know, what in your experience, again, from both sides of the fence, going from a paper system to a digital system, what are the practical implications that you've observed?
One of the biggest practical improvements that kind of forced our hand, you know what I'm going to say, was the streamlining of the sort of information that we maybe have to keep about a person supported, and then want to keep to help support the person in the right way, as they wish. So the sort of amount of different forms, shall we call them, that was in an organization, and I'm only talking about an organization with, let's say, 100 people supported, and at one count there was something like 21 different types of one particular form. I mean, it's just, you know, as time goes by, they change, they tweak, and so it was kind of like a great sort of standardization to the best of your ability to make those changes. But it was really, the real nice practical thing was fitting it into our what we were very proud of already before going digital, which was our person-centered practice. So the way that we engaged with people to ensure that their plans and their outcomes were a match to what they wanted. And we had to do that in many different ways with people. So we were very proud of that anyway, being able to bring that into a digital system, to have your finger on the pulse is the best way to put it. You have your information right there, no matter where you are in the world, anytime. It was very easy for people to not just monitoring, but actually even for families to see what was going on. It was, from a practical perspective, it saved a lot of time, it saved a lot of paper, it saved a lot of photocopying. But from a practical support delivery perspective, it also made me feel much better that we were providing support around a support plan, risk assessments, outcomes, one version. So that was a very practical tip, which in turn has a knock-on effect with the support that's provided, and handover. I can't get over the handover practicalities that it gave us. The time it used to take for a team members to do their handover when they were coming to work and leaving work, that really the time just decreased. So we would sit and have a coffee with people supported instead of sitting in the sleeping room and reading through all the diaries, all the com books. So many practicalities, Chris, you won't be able to stop me.
Thanks, Jane. And I think, and I think we know, as soon as you write something down, or as soon as you print it out, it's out of date. So, when you have, and this idea. So, and I remember when I first started in social care and working for a Dom Care company, you have a care plan in place, but it assumes that you're going to do the same thing every day because it's on paper and this is what we've assumed. But some mornings, if I've got a sore head, for whatever reason that may be, if I've got a sore head, it takes me a lot longer to get up and get dressed and get out of bed. But some mornings I wake up and I'm feeling springy and seize the day and all of that sort of thing. So, so why do we expect that the people who are supported, or people who are receiving a care service in whatever settings, are going to be exactly the same every day? There's no, because it's written down and therefore it's static. And I think one of the things for me is that it's always live, and you can build in parameters, and when you're leaving your notes and leaving your records. One of the other things as well that always comes in as well, another practicality, speech to text. Using speech to text instead of writing a note. If you look at how many minutes per day you save multiplied by how many staff you've got, most software makes your profit in the first month. It's ridiculous how much time you spend writing things down. There was one other thing that you mentioned there, which I didn't really touch on right at the beginning. So it'd be interested to hear from Paul's point of view as well. Is you mentioned family members, Lisa Jane. So one of the things I think that the software can help provide as well is bringing in that wider circle of support. And what would your experience of that be with Paul?
Yeah, it's really important to us. Yeah, it's one of our values, which is around including everyone, and one of the first go-to groups, people's family and friends for that. So, we include all kinds of different communication and sort of touch points with family and friends, of course. But I mean, as we've been mentioning, digital platform, iPlanet in our case, can be a real one-stop shop for all of that. For family members to be able to have a portal in, message people, see what they've been up to, connect there, not only is a good way for people to just see what's going on at any point, but also I think it makes for a really great, almost like a good context and background for when people do meet. People have a really good sense of where people are up to in life already when they talk. So it's been great for that, and lots of families. So I'm plugging in my computer. Lots of different.
It's like technical hitch.
I thought I was going to be cut off then. But anyway, I was running low. So lots of different families making a request to see them, and of course, consent issues to one side, because of course people that we support will need to say that's okay. But it's a huge benefit. Actually, what you also mentioned before, which is a real favourite for our support workers and teams, is the speech to text function. Like any text box that people can type into freely, the technology from speech to text, people have been particularly impressed with. Whatever the accent, well, I don't want to test it too much, but anyway, so far, whatever the accent.
I live in Yorkshire now. I'm not sure I'd be understood if I was.
I've been particularly sort of pleasantly surprised with that, and that's of course sped things up a lot. And even when people do that and there's the odd mistake, you can just edit it quickly. So actually, that's a real benefit for folks.
I think for me, I mean, not just iPlanet, but a lot of the systems out there, the culmination of of over a decade's worth of development, and the main feature everyone loves is being able to talk to your phone.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's such a time saver. I think that's the key. Yeah,
it is, and but also, for saving time, also allows you. Most people can speak faster than they can write, so it actually allows you to record more detail, and it gives you the time to record what does the person feel about today. You're not just writing all care delivered, someone had toast for breakfast. You can actually you can say, we went for a walk with Sally. She was absolutely delighted to get out because she's been a bit poorly recently. That, and then all of a sudden your record keeping is meaningful. We go from taking a list of things that we've done and actually making it, this is the impact we're making on somebody's life. And I think, going back to what we're saying about not being very good at evidencing these things, for me, the perception of social care externally has been a real source of frustration. I speak to friends 15 years ago who say you work in social care, they've got no idea what it is. Everyone knows what a nurse does and a doctor does, because everyone needs a nurse and a doctor at some point.
Yeah.
But unless you or someone has a social, needs a social care service, very few people really understand how important it is, and also how amazing the staff are, what they actually achieve. It's not just, we made breakfast and got someone dressed. They help someone reconnect with their family. They help someone achieve something they've been wanting to do for ages. They help someone move house. There's so many things, helping someone become more independent, preventing someone having another fall and going to hospital again because they're dreading it, and things like that. These things are so important, but we're not because we're still scribbling bits of paper to make sure we've recorded they've had toast. So I think all these little things accumulate to actually build into a real benefit of going digital from everyone's point of view. You include that circle of support, family and friends, the service user at the heart, staff's lives are easy, and then you can also evidence it to your regulators and your funders as well. So that's fantastic. So as I go around these events and the conversations we've been having, particularly in England at the moment, but also, we've been speaking to providers in both sides of the Irish Sea, up in Scotland and Wales as well. One of the big concerns, or one of the things, particularly for a local provider rather than the big national providers, is really about the impact of moving to digital. So it's not the idea of going digital itself; it's actually the worry about doing it. So, particularly, would frontline staff adopt it? Is it going to be too disruptive? Things like that. So what would be your experience on that, and what would be your advice to providers who are considering going digital but maybe nervous about how their staff are going to cope, or where the time's going to come from, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a really good point, and it's let's face it, it's a reality, isn't it? People fear a bit of change, and certain people really fear tech. So there's a few things I'd say about this. One is that planning is key. I know that sounds like an obvious point to make, and don't expect an immediate jump from everyone. So personally, I think what with the sort of lessons that we've learned over the last sort of year and a half is that you need to kind of phase things in at a reasonable rate. Make sure that you're communicating to ultra clear with people what's happening when. Break it up into small chunks so the organization can sort of keep control of things being applied and implemented and rolled out where they are. Stop from time to time. That's what we've done, to check in with people and say, does this feel all right? Is there anything extra needed? Make room for the broad rollout of digitization and what those particular timelines might mean, but always have a bit of flex. There's been lots of different individual people, but also individual services that just require something a little different. And we've only noticed that when we've just started. I think when you roll anything out this big, you learn as you go sometimes as well, don't you? So that's sort of 10-20%. Make sure that you've got time to figure stuff out as you go. I also think that you're introducing not only a platform into people's lives, but of course people have got kit with them as well. So at Seeability, we've got tablets that people now use instead of being at a laptop or PC or writing on a piece of paper. So that kind of thing people need to get used to as well. So and when I've rolled this out and launched this with particular teams and services, you'll have a mixture of people in the room. You'll have like a third of the people will be slightly ahead of where I'm at. You'll have the majority, you know, like they've reached the end of the launch before I've even started. They're just sort of, you know, basically people that are younger than me and more tech savvy.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
They're already writing care plans, yeah.
exactly, yeah, we're done. But anyway, but you'll get the sort of majority of people, of course, that you're sort of walking them through at a reasonable pace, but you'll also get people that are just fearful of the change and need a bit more. And we've been very careful to listen to those people that need a bit more. I myself and other colleagues have had longer sessions with those people that need it, one-to-one sessions with people, particularly those that are that require a bit extra. Maybe they have sight or vision issues and accessibility issues you need to work through with them. You know, there are lots of different ways I think that we need to make bespoke our support for our sort of colleagues and so on when it's being implemented. You know, the initial investment. Sorry, Chris, go on.
But yeah, that really is. I mean, but I think, you know, in the grand scheme of things, you were those concessions and those sort of bespoke approaches you would do anyway for your team members. So, you know, you're not really changing the way you work. You're just using it. You're taking the same sort of principles of all of your training and staff development, but just putting it onto a tablet with a system on it.
Yeah, of course, and I think it's reasonable to expect that you know, an initial piece of thoughtful investment in colleagues will pay off and pay dividends over the longer term. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing sort of happen in Seeability. We also do, just to keep listening to people, we found this really useful. We have these quarterly champion meetings where representatives of teams get together, talk about what's great, share good practice, any issues that have come up that we need to resolve and sort out and so on. So we have this sort of continual, I guess, listening exercise going on where we're sort of constantly keeping on top of these things. And sort of, you know, no matter how beneficial something is and good something is, I think that's particularly important because you might sort of just lose grip of something that's quite easily solved, but you just don't hear about it, you know, until it becomes an issue. So broadly speaking, I think a sort of careful, you know, thoughtful, mindful approach to implementing it is the way that we've found most useful. And the sort of tapering off of these initial sort of teething issues around fear of change and so on, as that tapers off, the benefits shine through and you know, come to the surface more and more. So yeah, it's been pretty good so far. And I think I sort of go back to clarity as well. I think no one would do this, I hope, but just it landing on someone's desk, inbox or to-do list one Monday after not much consultation and clarification is not the thing to do. So giving people plenty of heads up and some clarity over what's happening when is a really good idea.
Okay, yeah, thanks. And I think that including people in that journey, you know, and you know, how those benefits. Lisa Jane, just from let's talk from the project side of the fence, maybe. You know, from your own experience, you know, what would you say? You know, what do you think are the best ways? You know, we know the benefits. We've got a system. We're going to go with it. What's the best way to overcome those sort of concerns providers might have over adoption? About how, you know, what's the best approach you would recommend as well from a project side of the fence?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think you kind of hit the key points there, both of you already. From my own personal experience of rolling out, implementing a digital system, there's two experiences that come to mind immediately. One was very successful and one failed, and I had to restart it. And I learned so much from that failure experience as well as the successful one. The key component was about I mean, it's such a hot topic, isn't it? It's about managing change. It doesn't matter whether it's a digital system. It doesn't matter what the change is. The principles are the same, exactly the same. And as you've already talked about, it's about not doing to people, but it's about communicating with your organization, taking people on that journey, explaining the whys, explaining the hows, what's going to happen, you know, listening to the feedback. As you know, this is even before you have even potentially chosen a system. you know, that you're going to go with. Get the feedback off people. You will always have that fear from a trainer's perspective. Now, if I could put my trainer hat on for a minute, I can remember one lady I trained a few years ago. It was actually just as COVID had started, and she was absolutely adamant she was not going to be able to use this system, and I mean, she vocalized it to the whole group. So I was thinking, okay, well, we'll get around this, because I come across it so many times, and you wouldn't believe, but you know, by the end of the session, she was delighted at how easy it was. And this was a lady where I would say things normally like, well, do you use social, oh, can I say Facebook? Do you use Facebook?
We're not the BBC. You're not the BBC, fine, yeah.
Am I allowed to say that? Do you use Instagram? Do you shop online? And her response was no, no, no. I thought, oh, okay, now we got a tough one here. But actually, it wasn't. It was all about, well, I didn't know this was coming. Nobody told me. You know, it was more about the being involved and part of the journey. It wasn't anything to do with the system. I think you've got to have the buy-in, you've got to create the buzz, you've got to create the excitement, take people with you on the journey. And I think my experience from a project management side, Chris, if I kind of put my implementation hat on, you've got to have the project management side of things and the leadership side of things, because they can be very, very different skills, and it may be one person that supports that implementation and rollout with both of those skills. But you've got to be very mindful. It's not just about deliverables and timeframes and the project and the cost. It's actually about the emotional aspects of as well, and how that's communicated and how people are heard. And as Paul said quite rightly, is evaluate along the way. Once you start to roll, keep that evaluation going, and a great way to do that is with champions and steering groups, etc. So you've got a representative of each team at least to bring that back in. And when people feel heard and part of that journey, then that change barrier is broken down straight away, and people then have an open mind to give things a try. That's my experience from both sides of the fence, really.
So I think our next webinar will be Lisa Jane's hats. So depending on
I got many hats. I'm very passionate about this topic in particular, so stop me now.
So I think that's great, and I think so. You know, so that involving the whole team, sort of preparing, making sure that there's input in either how the choice is even being made. What are the priorities? I know certainly from my experience as well. You got to look at who's going to be using it every day. So so generally, I'll go to Paul first, and then also your input, Lisa Jane, as well. Again, is so you've got a system, you've made that choice, your team's prepared. What normally happens next? It's an idea so far. When what happens? When do I get it in my hands? What's the general process?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time ensuring that we connected with people, like in a room almost, but often virtual for obvious reasons, like in a room, letting people know what's coming and when, making sure people got sight of it so it wasn't a surprise, whether that be watching demos or a video of someone like yourself, Chris, talking through the system and so on and so forth, that they had something something they could sort of help them get a handle on it. Because I think one of the reasons why change is scary is because you just don't know quite what's coming. There's a bit of an unknown sense to it. So I think breaking that down to help people, sort of dilute their fear if they have it. I should say actually that it's of course it's a significant number and percentage, but there are also lots of people that really want this to happen. I think we often don't talk about those, do we? But it's a significant portion of people are sort of rubbing their hands together and saying, let's bring this on as quickly as possible. So there is an element, isn't there, of dealing with those people that find change very difficult, but also actually quenching the thirst of those people that really want to give it a go. I mean, what we've tended to do with those people is give them sort of quite elevated, prominent positions to get it started in their teams. So using them as
a champion sort of model.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the So I guess broadly as an organisation, setting things out in terms of what the big benefits are and the big sort of milestones are, but on a more sort of team or individual based aspect, helping people, you know, get a grip of what's really coming, seeing the benefits, but you know, based on, as we've spoken a lot, like that sort of user perspective. And when I say user, it's just someone that's using the actual platform itself. What does that look like? What does it feel like? Can I play around with it? So that sort of thing takes place quite a bit. I've had a very similar experience to what Lisa Jane mentioned earlier on, quite recently, where a team member, a support worker of ours, didn't want to join a sort of launch training session because she was so fearful, and she thought she might cry, bless her, if she was part of the session.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, well, let's do something one-to-one. And I just spent half an hour with her, but at the end of the half an hour, she felt a lot more settled. I met up with her a couple of weeks later, and she was getting on with it and telling other team members and supporting other team members with it. So I felt really proud of her, but also I think it was just a good bit of evidence that if you break down the fear and you're sensitive with how people feel, I think you'll reap the rewards in the longer term.
Yeah.
And Lisa James, you know, in terms of prepping, you know, your team are ready for it. You know, what then happened? You know, you've got everyone's ready, and a system has been created. You know, what generally happens after that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, the rollouts of different types of systems, different types of organizations needs to be tweaked a little bit. But generally, sort of from my perspective, you need to have some very clear plans in place. As Paul said at the very, very beginning, planning is vital. And that includes things like the project team. It doesn't have to be super heavily resourced, but it does have to be somebody that is a decision maker. So somebody who can say, yes, I want that particular drop down or that particular text or that particular plan section, etc., etc. Somebody who knows and understands the reporting needs as well, because you know what you put in is going to come out. So you've got to make sure that you've got the right people on the project team. You've got to make sure you've resourced. And what I mean by that is it could potentially be that you may have champions, that the folks that are really going to help buddy up going forward. You've got to enable to make sure that they have potentially time off the rota, so to speak, if that's the case, so they can spread the word and they can buddy up and help people. You've got to make sure you've got your infrastructure sorted, and I have come across a couple of issues when I was rolling out where I had maybe not thought about that the first time around as well as I should have done. And especially in North Wales, you know, internet's not our best. You know, it's a lot better now because this was many, many years ago. But I hadn't thought about that for every single sort of service or people's homes, that to make sure that they had the devices. So you have to think ahead. And the communication side. Vital that people understand that there is buy-in from senior management, execs, the board. If you're expecting supporters and managers to buy in, they've got to understand that this is the direction that we're going. A business decision has been taken and everybody is on board and there is support out there. Let people know what that support is, who's their go-to person, even for any questions during rollout and implementation, not just about the training side of things further down the line. My biggest piece of advice would be for any type of system, if you are going to introduce something, and this is probably so obvious, if you're going to introduce something, remember to tell the team what you're taking away. So remember to tell them, what is this replacing? This is not on top of your workload. That's the biggest fear and anxiety.
It's a transition, not an addition. Right.
Exactly. I love that. Love that. Might have to steal that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Make sure that you're making clear to people what the process is as well. You've got to know what you're doing to do it right. But the benefits, share the benefits, you know, and don't forget to celebrate success.
That's great. Well, thanks very much, Lisa Jane. So I'm just conscious of time with 10 minutes left. So I'm just going through the questions. I've seen someone has Sandra has raised a question. I know you've answered in the box there, Lisa Jane, but just to share it with everyone that the question was, if one of the residents go into hospital, they usually print a care plan off so the hospital knows the resident's needs. How does this work going digital? So obviously most digital systems will have an option to export or print the information that's in there. But also there are current moves within the sector at the moment. The main reason for the push from the Department of Health and Social Care for digitisation in social care is in.
It's not me and you, pal.
So the formation of the is aimed to integrate health and social care services a little bit more. And the reason they want everyone to go digital is because of the benefits that we've discussed here and how we do it, but the main reason is so that information could be shared between those services. So if a resident in a care home or a person supported in a supported living setting is going into hospital, that information will be captured in a certain way, so it can just be pinged straight over to the ambulance service or to the hospital that they're going to, and then the discharge notes will come back. That's a little way off, but the first step towards that is shared care records. And the shared care records is the reason for the personalised care and support plan standards coming in and being mandatory from January, is to try and standardise how things are captured. So it's not as scary as it sounds. The NHS and the PRSB have been extremely poor at communicating this to the social care side. Who'd have thought social care is the poor sister of healthcare once again? But yeah, the main, one of the strategic vision for digitization is for integration for situations like that, people transferring between services, being able to see what your GP for Mrs. Smith's GP said the last time they went, what their up-to-date records are. So hopefully that's what answered that question. In the meantime, as Lisa Jane has said, you can export or print if you need to. And I'm just going to have a quick look at some of the other questions that have come in. So in terms of getting around digitalized systems, some quite specific questions around there. So the Digital Transformation Fund is available for all CQC registered providers in going digital. So they're administered by your regional ICS, and I apologise to everyone who's on this webinar from Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. I'm afraid it doesn't apply to you. There are other things in place, and don't worry, we've got some specific info. But so your ICS, which depends on what region you're in, and they will normally, there's a lot of events going on at the moment. I mean, Nottingham tomorrow, well, actually Nottingham now, but I mean an event with Nottinghamshire ICS tomorrow as an event for the providers in their area. So your ICSs will sort of reach out. Then there are a list of systems that are approved by the NHS. Take a look at those, see which one works for you, and then you can apply for funding towards that. But I can send you some more information around that. Who asked me that question? That was Alice. So I've got some more information I can send you after this webinar. I'll send it to you directly, Alice. Alice Fry, that is. There's funding available for supported living not registered for CQC. So that's from Holly. The Digital Transformation Fund is at the moment only available for services that are CQC registered, unfortunately. So if you're a supporting living service that isn't CQC registered, i.e. I'm guessing not delivering personal care and things, then it wouldn't be eligible, but I can certainly drop you an email with some info about other options there. And Sandra's asked about transfer of information. So there we go, from if you're going onto your computer onto a digital platform. Lisa, Jane, Paul, getting set up, getting the info in the first place, what kind of approaches have you taken?
In terms of getting support plans uploaded and so on, yeah. So the approach we've taken to that, there may be better ones, but the approach we've taken to that is first of all launching the particular digital platform in services and helping people start with doing the sort of daily notes and recording, so getting used to the system. And whilst that's happening, and whilst people are getting used to that system, getting together some help in the organisation and giving people some time to upload, to transfer the particular data. So support plans are the big ones in our particular example. making sure that that's all thorough. And we go over that and check that with people before it actually goes live, so you can upload these things and edit them and just make sure it's okay before you press the button to make it live and go and get going. So we've done that, and it's a staggered plan.
Yeah.
We've had to alter it a couple of times, but asking people to do all that in one go would have been overwhelming. So we've staggered that. What I would say as an addition is to be clear with people that even though it's tempting for some to record things digitally and at the same time duplicate that and keep doing what you're currently doing, that's tempting for people. They feel as though, some people feel that that's reassuring and adds a degree of security. Of course, it's a bad idea. Duplication brings risk, for starters, on many different levels. It's twice the work, and actually you just need to trust in the system. So we very much guard against that, because of course that will lead to sort of many different problems, and also the wrong perception, because the perception, of course, and reality eventually is that it's less work, not more.
Yeah. And Lisa Jane, I mean, just very quickly, so I think the question is to transfer information that you already have on a computer. Most systems we can only speak for one particular system, which is iPlanet, but in general you can copy and paste existing info to get you started, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, for the
review and update.
Exactly. If you incorporate the sort of transition from your computer, your Word document, your other system, whatever it may be, piece of paper, then if you do it through that same ethos and values around the person, and when the person is due to have their review or is requested to have a review or make some changes, that's a perfect time to start that transition. There's usually, this is with my more technical hat on now, got another hat here. There's usually on most systems, and again, I can only really speak for iPlanet in certainty, but there's usually a way to do some bulk uploading of static data. So for example, the things that I call static are the things that don't change. Your date of birth, or don't change very often. Surname, your name, that type of thing, address. So there's lots of things and other information that revolves around the individual that doesn't make us part of the support plan. The best bet is to get that information on in kind of one sweep with the provider, with the vendor. And care plans, support plans, I would absolutely go with what Paul's saying here at how to do that. Take the opportunity to review, because the chances are it's going to be very different. It's not going to be an exact copy. You never ever will.
It's on paper, so it's already out of date, as we know.
Exactly. Take the opportunity to review your own processes. It's a fantastic opportunity to do it while you're creating your digital support plan. And again, it goes back to resourcing as well, and making sure that people have the time to sit down with people to get the support plan over.
Thanks a lot. That's great. So, and then there was another question coming from Holly, just saying about recommending a secure platform for staff communication. Again, I can only speak for them, but most systems actually will have an inbuilt internal messaging system, so staff teams can message each other. But also at the moment, alongside the digital transformation fund and that transform project, you can also get NHS mail for free for secrecy registered providers. But in terms of secure communication, most of the systems that we're talking about, and like I said, I can only speak for iPlanet, but you can communicate internally within those systems as well. So you wouldn't necessarily need another secure app, like a WhatsApp for social care as well. So but look, I think we're just coming up to time now. So everyone who's here today, thank you very much for attending. I hope you found it really informative. Everyone, there'll be a follow-up email for everyone who's registered, everyone who's attended, and if there's any other further information you require, there's some details up on screen there as well. But just before we sign off, I just really want to thank Lisa Jane for your time today, and Paul, thank you. It's really useful insights. It's been a real pleasure, a real honour to have you on board. So thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.